Thinking outside the box. I say this often. There's two things. You can do a lot more with a lot less than you think. And the other piece is don't do it like everybody else. From the order forms to the operations to the sales processes. Disrupt, disrupt, disrupt. Think, oh, this is how they do it. How can I do that in the opposite way? How do I backfill and figure out, okay, that works fantastically.
Welcome to the CTO Compass podcast. I'm your host, Mark Wormhort, tech strategist and executive coach. In every episode, we meet tech leaders, from startup CTOs to enterprise CIOs, to explore what it means to lead in tech today. They share their stories and their lessons so that you can navigate your own journey in tech. Let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, today's guest is David Soileau, co-founder of the Gopher app, an AI-powered logistics startup, and they're rewriting how delivery works. No brokers, there's no black holes in delivery. They provide real-time quotes, live tracking, and reliable delivery. And it's not just another delivery app, it's actually a full platform. They've shifted to a platform that I like, and it gives businesses much better control over all of their shipping. So despite that they've been around for over 5 years, they just landed a spot in Techstars, which is really exciting as well. David's here to talk about disrupting settled industries, building AI tools that actually work in the field out there, and how to do that, scaling a startup in a settled industry that has been around for such a long time. David, welcome to the podcast. Tell me about Gopher. It's been around for 5-6 years. What is the origin story behind it?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me. Super excited to talk about Gopher. So we started coding actually in 2019. We originally coded a marketplace, kind of like Amazon, but for local businesses to have their inventory in it. Shoppers could shop, get same day delivery. It was beautiful. COVID hit, the hurricanes down here hit, everything just kind of got into disarray. So we pivoted, right? We have a huge oil and gas scene down here in the South, and we just moved straight into delivering for the oil and gas supply industry. And what happened was we had cars, SUVs, pickup trucks in our system that's built kind of like Uber or Grubhub, where, a shipper could select, to and from address, a vehicle size, how much the load weighed, and press go. Well, we ended up adding more to that fleet in the areas of Sprinter vans, 18-wheelers, gooseneck trailers, dump trailers, whatever you could think of, right? So a full array. And what this did to the industries was it changed the way that shipping has been done for the past couple centuries. It changed the idea of, so in the civilian sector, if you will, you could order a pizza for like $12 and you can watch it come out of the oven and go into a delivery driver's car. And then you get notified when it ends at your front door. If it's late, you know it's going to be late, right? You can talk to delivery driver, whatever, through the apps that they have and different food delivery services apps and things like that. But in the industries, the oil and gas sector, you could order a $2 million pump, right? It's 20,000 pounds. And you have no idea where it is, right? It gets picked up by somebody somewhere. You got to call a dispatch. It's just, there's no accountability. There's no eyes on. And so we took, actually Cummins North America was one of our first industrial, really the first industrial player that we got involved. And we took all their feedback, built out what the system really needed to be, and started, pulling other people in, other companies, industrial based companies, and getting their feedback and really building out our software to satisfy the long, much needed innovation in the industrial delivery sector, right? So that's really where we are today, right?
So, and why did you actually go down the software route? I mean, there's so many logistics companies out there, right, that just do shipping. They have their customers. A lot happens just through phone calls or emails or WhatsApp or whatever. Why did you actually decide to go down the software route and become almost like a tech platform?
So the biggest need was, like you said, phone calls and emails. This is an outdated method, right? So if I want something delivered and I'm a valve supply guy, right? Say I'm getting a valve supply, I have to make a phone call, get a quote for this 18 wheeler. I wait 24, maybe 48 hours for a quote to come back that may or may not be right. I finally find a quote I like, right? After 15 phone calls, maybe 10 emails. I like the quote. I press go. I don't know who's coming to pick it up. Somebody shows up at some point. It's on the road now. It'll be there. I look at Google Maps. This is how long it says it'll be there. Uh-oh, I forgot. I need to tell this person he needs to go to this gate. I've got to call their dispatch. The dispatch calls the driver. The driver may be busy and can't answer right away. Now, hours go by. Nobody knows where this guy is. Nobody knows what's going on. So the software it's much needed to change the way things were done, to save time, make things more efficient, to take out the middlemen in the whole process. So we added the instant quoting, right? We built out algorithms that figure out exactly what the drivers need to make. They take into account the traffic. They take into account 46 different points that affect the cost of delivery, everything involved, right? And gives you the perfect price that to where all parties win. And then the bill of lading is digital. So once a carrier puts an order in, it's digitally signed. Once a carrier picks it up, it's digitally signed. Once it's delivered, it's digitally signed. And so you have full accountability of where it was in the process, what parts were delivered. And then on top of that, you've got a map in the software where anybody can open it up and see, oh, look, there's my order on the map. That's where it is. And worst case, you have the person's phone number that's actually driving the product. You call that person directly or text that person directly through the app. Hey, where you at? Well, you're in traffic. Good to go. Just wanted to get an ETA. And so there's no middleman. And that's the software is the backbone. And what we've seen just since we've started in the past 5 years, a lot of companies moving towards that, right? Where what we're kind of doing is the one-stop shop, but you've got some of the courier sector, software companies, logistics companies that are doing this. And you've got some of the middle, like bigger trailers and trucks and trailers, right? Goosenecks, whatever. And then you've got other companies doing the 18-wheeler stuff. And we've got all those things get combined into one, to where it doesn't matter if you're shipping a box of O-rings or a 30,000 pound generator. It's all on one platform, right?
Cool. And how hard is it? Because this is or at least it feels like to me, a very old industry, a very physical industry, where how hard is it to convince your customers to go all digital, right? Because even for them, they are used to the old ways of working, picking up the phone, calling maybe the shipper or logistics company they're used to working with, and now it's all becoming digital. I don't know if there's an app, right, or a laptop, or it doesn't matter, but it's quite a change in the ways of working and going all digital for your customers as well. How hard is it to bring them on board?
Well, it's different, right? We're throwing a wrench in their day-to-day operations, right? But it's the right size wrench. I can say that, right? And quote me on that. It's
Uh-huh.
it's it's the right tool for the job, if that makes sense. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to get them on board with, hey, don't call anybody or email anybody. Just type in the to and from address, and you could even snap a picture, and our AI will take the size and dimensions of that load, categorize the right vehicle, do all the legwork for you. But you shouldn't be calling or emailing anybody. You do that enough through your day-to-day business, right? Just type it in. It takes 11 seconds to get a quote, to type everything and get the quote back, and then press go if you like it, and boom, you're done. If you're worried about it, you open the app and you look at the map and you're like, oh, cool, there's the driver, no big deal. Maybe the driver calls you, but he calls the person, the point of contact that actually knows. There's no phone tag going on. It's all the spaces are set. So getting people to sign up and give it a try is no problem. I would say the big hurdle is like getting them to remember, so we are working a lot, like, hey, don't forget, Gopher's here. You don't call anybody. Don't call us. And people will call us still. It's like, hey, glad you called. Just want to remind you, it's faster if you use the app. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. What's my login, right? And so you're right. There is a hurdle in that. And what we're seeing is the next generation that's coming up through the ranks is more tech savvy. and more apt, they're on their phones already, right? So they're more apt to use the app, to use the desktop version too if they're sitting at their desk. So yeah, to answer your question, it's being accepted, but there is that little learning curve.
And remembering to use the app or the website instead of just calling you or emailing you. Nice.
Brand awareness.
So, and then you're doing a lot of AI innovations as well, right? Like Pic-to-Ship, where you can just snap a picture of whatever it is that you need to ship, and it's actually going to estimate the dimensions and the weight, and
Hmm.
that's really kind of cool. Tell us a bit more about how you're using AI in Gopher.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, the pick to ship, you can simply take a photo of anything, and it'll categorize the vehicle needed, the dimensions, and thus getting you the price. All you'd have to type in is the to and from address, right? Other ways we're using it in some software we haven't implemented just yet is our GoPilot. And it what it does is it takes into account, when a driver snaps the photo of the vehicle with the cargo, strapped down or however it's placed on the vehicle or in the vehicle, it it makes sure it tests it against the DOT regulations and standards, right? The FMCA and all that stuff, right? So that way there's full accountability that this load is strapped down. And what it'll do is it'll give you a go or no go. If it says you're good to go, then that means it's strapped down per the standards. Everything's safe. That picture and that go report gets submitted and saved, so that if something does happen, we can always go back to that. If it says no go, it won't even let you get the coordinates for for the delivery drop off. You actually have to restrap it down, and so the AI is assisting in all that process. And so that's that's one of our bigger tools right there that's really satisfying the problem of, loads shifting and getting damaged, and it's costing the industry tons of money. It's costing insurance companies tons of money. It's costing, the drivers their livelihoods. This is a solution for all parties involved. And that's really what we're getting at, is just disrupting the industry from every angle, right? And utilizing the AI for that.
So cool. And so on the one hand, you're a logistics company, but really you are a tech company, right? So what's been the hardest part of, and the things you're building are quite complex, right? It's not a simple website. It's really quite complex doing all these AI solutions. What's been the hardest part building all of that technology?
Man, I would say the struggle is real when it comes to all the systems working together, right? So we've got an Android and iOS driver app. We've got the Android and iOS mobile app for the shippers. We've got the web based desktop version, right? The dashboard. That all these systems have to work together. They've got to work with AWS. They've got to work with Google Maps. They've got to work with Auth Zero. It's all these different platforms and software pieces come into play where, we'll have an outage. Like AWS will have an outage, and it's like, oh, the system is down. So we go back to the archaic phone call and email pathway, right, to make sure that our customers get their delivery needs satisfied, which you're going to have, right? I mean, phone lines go down, internet goes down, whatever, it's the same problems, just on a different scale, a different type of situation. Um, so getting everything to work together properly has been a trial in and of itself, right? The constant updating for the apps in the App Store and the Google Play Store, just different things like that.
Yeah, I think that's something we all recognize after publishing. There's a lot of work in keeping it updated and make sure that it keeps working with every new version of Android or iOS that comes out. There's work involved there for sure. So, what are the tech mistakes that you have made? Right, I'm sure that over the 5 6 years that you've been in business, you've made some big mistakes. What is it that you really wouldn't repeat anymore?
Whew, so, I mean, even one of the mundane details, right? Our first dashboard rendition, it it had only a dark mode. So it really comes down to like scope of work, right? The actual roadmap and mapping out, features and making sure that there's room for improvement. Um, that was kind of hard coded in, so we couldn't switch to light mode. The color schemes were off to where, you switch to light mode, different verbiage and copy would disappear. So there were simple things like that along the way, and as I myself am not a coder, so there's probably a whole book of things we could say are things we should have done differently. But what we had a big trick up our sleeve. We had engineers that had built an app similar called the Waiter app, and how they kind of took the pitfalls from that experience and were able to say, hey, we've got to build this like this, we've got to do this and this, we're going to mitigate these problems, we're going to build to scale from the beginning, right? Which we really did. And having the in-house engineers building was probably our best bet. We did outsource a little bit, and that really was another fault, right? Where we didn't get the keys to the kingdom. We didn't have full visibility. We have pieces of that software that's broken. And so, you know, there's a lot to be said, but I'll say, taking the time and planning would have definitely mitigated many of the mistakes we made, right? And having good accountability of our engineers while they're building.
So what are you? Are you a logistics company, or would you call yourselves more of a tech business?
I'd say we're more of a tech business. I mean, our sole purpose is to utilize tech to disrupt the logistics sector completely, from retail all the way up to government. So,
So and how have you organized that tech team? I mean, you're not a coder by any means. Do you have like a CTO that is working with you? How does that work for in Gopher?
so yes, we do have a CTO, Jared Beekman. He's kind of heading up the engineering part. Um, and like I said, he came from Waiter, and that was his original gig. Right, he was their first employee engineer. And we all come from the military, right? I was in the Marines. CEO Warren Vandiver was in the Marines as well, and the Army. And then Jared Beekman was in the Navy, right, as a corpsman with Marines. And so it his point of view and kind of how we've structured everything. We come up with features. He tells us if it's possible, right? That's kind of how our meetings go. And it's been cool, right? Some of the things were like, nah, someone else is doing it. It is possible, So it's definitely a team effort when it comes to the roadmap and the feature requests and MVPs and things like that. Like, how do we make the most viable product? But yeah, so he's kind of heading up the is it possible fighting the rest of us, for what for our wish list, if you will.
I love that. And I think you're a great example of what automation and maybe even some AI can do. You actually shrunk your team over the years. I think I read somewhere you started with a team of about 40, and I think you've now brought it down to, I don't know, five or six. And most of that is through automation and AI. And tell us about that journey, right? What did that look like?
So we had help, right? The COVID fiasco, the hurricanes. During our pivot, we really just found that there was, we could do a lot less, or we could do a lot more with a lot less than we thought, right? So looking into, okay, how can we mitigate the need for as much customer service, right? Problem solving. Well, if orders are put in accurately utilizing the AI, that's going to mitigate the amount of phone calls we have. If we can make sure that the bill of lading is automated, right? There's less documentation. It has to be scanned in and physically signed and returned to the shipper. If we could, mitigate the amount of phone calls and emails coming back, less people on the team. Data entry, everything is self sign up now, so there's no manual process there. So it was kind of just a multitude of things, as well as COVID forced people to move, and well, really the hurricane forced people to move from this area. So a lot of our data entry kind of left. We moved from the W-2 driver to the contract 1099 gig worker, right? So it was a plethora of different things that led us to that realization that we could do the operations of this company and satisfy all the needs with fewer people. And yeah, we're down to five. We have about 650,000 contractors across the United States that are driving for us. Um, so it's a big team, but a small team at the same time.
That's cool. Love that. Because indeed, you're not a local shipping company, right? You cover most of North America, which is quite sizable. So 650,000 drivers, that's and contractors. I get that they're not on your team, but still, that's a very big pool that you can leverage.
Absolutely.
On the industry, then I think you're starting to upset it, and you've said it right in the consumer business. A lot of this has already been done. You can see where your package is, you can see where your pizza is when it's coming out of the oven, when it gets delivered. You're starting to upset the bigger traditional logistics industry. Why is it still broken like that in 2025? I mean, almost everything now for us consumers is digital. Why is logistics, I'd say, so far behind that you're upsetting it?
Well, it's hard to say exactly why. I mean, if you look at the trend is, with hotshot drivers, they'll start their own business. They kind of stay within their network, right? Whoever knows me is who's going to use me, type of deal, right? So the relationship building, things like that. And so it's kind of like that mentality is, the good old boy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So that's kind of a lot of what we've seen, where just behaviors are kind of set in stone, right? Old dogs, new tricks. That's what we're trying to do. So getting that across, where it's like, hey, this change is important. It's 2025. I can see my pizza, like you said. Where's my where's my power tools? Where's my generators? Where's my materials for this job? Where's this valve that's holding up $100,000 an hour until it's replaced? So you should be able to send a car quickly, right, to get a small box and pay 20 bucks, right, or pennies on the dollar if it's across the country. You want it overnighted, let's get it. There's a big difference in what we're doing and the way it's always been done. But I think it just really took the right technology and the right push into utilizing it correctly in that sphere.
Nice. So, and then you have all those, right? And that's probably, I think, your hardest thing. You have all these people that are still doing it old school, right? I know this guy who can ship for me, so why would I try anything else? How are you actually winning over all those businesses that are stuck on their old ways, that have the people they know, the shipper that they know, and just are okay with that?
So the biggest thing is showing them the inefficiencies. We don't want to take that person's job, but sometimes we just say, hey, they can drive for Gopher. They can drive for more than just your company. They can be your preferred driver. And if they're unavailable, which they sometimes are for you, you'll have a whole fleet at your fingertips of vetted, safe drivers. You can track them, so it really just boils down to features, right? So with software comes features. With the old school comes phone call, email. That's the features you get, right? So with our software, we can make your current drivers more efficient. You're going to pay about the same price as if you were using them, except that you can track them now. You have the digital bill of lading, you have the instant quotes, you have everything
Same
documented
minutes.
in our system. So it's really winning them over that way, where it's like, hey, look, this is the change that you need. As 2025 again, right? This is innovation. You want to be better, get better, right?
I love that, and I love that you also took basically you're okay to just onboard their old model, onboard their old drivers, and just combine that with your technology and continue the same way of working and making it more efficient, giving them more insights, more technology, just to let it work better. But they can still work with the drivers that they've always worked with. I love that. So, and then if we go into the technology a bit more, you've been around for quite some time. And still, I saw you were recently accepted into Techstars. And I always thought that was for like early startups. You've been around for so long. Why did you apply now? And what are they actually bringing to the table for you?
So we're really trying to expand our knowledge base, and I mean, we can't stop innovating, right? We're in another funding round. They actually approached us, and, wanted a piece of the pie, as well as to ensure that their piece of the pie gained as much traction as possible. So moving us into, being able to learn more about the industries, get more investor visibility, has been a huge win with Techstars, right? It's a very visual, or I should say visible organization, right? It's the investor prospects are their eyes light up when we mention Techstars. They've heard about it, they know about it. Um, so really, it's one of those humility things where we don't know everything, and having, and this is not our first accelerator, right? We've been through a few accelerators, and some of them were better than others. I'll say there's a way to learn from everyone you come into contact with in the business world, and I really challenge everyone to have that, to kind of let their pride down and take advice, take coaching, and you've got to weed the good from the bad, or the bad from the good, right? But it's super important, and that's kind of what we were after, was just getting more insight, more understanding of, even just corporate structure, investment intake, just different things on the business side, inside the business, that we needed to focus on, kind of get to our next steps. I'll say, long story short, just to cap that question, we've been operating along the I-10 corridor, delivering out into the United States, Canada, Mexico. And really, this next big step, and what we're raising funds for, is to hit that national acceptance for shippers everywhere in the United States, at least. And that's what Techstars is helping us do, is really expand.
Expand your network, expand your client base all over the country, like really go full North America.
Yes.
Cool. That was my next question. So, what is next for you guys? What are the big goals? And I guess that is going national, well, national plus Canada. Is
Yeah.
that next big goal for you?
Yeah, that's really
So,
it.
what needs to happen?
So our biggest play is, right, we've got a lot of features that we've got to focus on. We've got a lot, we just stood up more markets within our software so that we can kind of track where people are signing up. We've got drivers signing up in droves, 500 to 600 a month, signing up to drive for us. um, which is a lot, right? And where are they? How do we keep tabs on them? So, we've got a heat map that just, I mean, it's covered, right? The United States is covered with drivers. And so, it's kind of going through and figuring out which markets to really hone in on, to get them, the orders moving, and trickle in as fast as possible, and making sure that drivers are there to satisfy them, and then that the software doesn't break, right? Because if that's a daily task, is, oh my gosh, if AWS isn't down, something else is broken, right? So just kind of fixing everything to align and operationally be, successful and competent, right?
Yeah. And I think that big AWS outage a couple of weeks ago was quite painful for not just you, for I think a lot of people that
Yeah.
depend on them. So, and where do you see? I mean, you now have Pic-to-Ship, you have GoPilot already as your AI features. What do you think is going to happen with AI in logistics over the next couple of years? Where is it going to go even further than where you guys have already gone?
So we've started playing with other features too. As far as AI goes, we want to make shippers their own brokers, to where there's no middleman, to where Gopher doesn't even feel like a middleman, right? There's literally, I've got this shipment, this AI is helping me satisfy this shipment, right? To where there's almost no thought process. We have an extension we built on Chrome, where you click the extension, you click screenshot, and it uses the AI to analyze that page you're on, whether it's an email or whatever it is, and it gives you the quote, and you press go, and the delivery is happening, right? So, I mean, it's fast. It is, with the AI, when it's properly trained, it is its own broker. It's not a person. It's not a, it's the end all be all to logistics situation. You ask any logistician, it keeps them up at night. It is a nightmare dealing with people's goods, right? I mean, typically the logistics of an industry or a company is the make or break for that company's revenue. If a shipment isn't on time, you lose the job. If it's lost, you lose the product. There's so much involved. We are the face of most companies, right? That delivery driver that's saying, "Hey, here's your stuff." It's like that's it. This company just dropped us off, and they were very rude. It was a driver. It wasn't the company, but that's it. So ensuring that everything moves perfect is saving the face of our clients. So having that AI piece work the system to where it's perfect is, I see where it's going, where, AI agents, actual computer generated people that are handling the day to day through AI is where it's at, where we're headed probably.
Yeah, I just love how you're upsetting a very legacy industry with technology and with I mean, so many startups are just in the tech space. I love how you're in such a different space and still making it work and building a tech startup in that industry. So, final question: what is one piece of advice that you would have for somebody that's like you, trying to fully disrupt a legacy industry with technology?
Thinking outside the box. I say this often. There's two things. You can do a lot more with a lot less than you think. And the other piece is, don't do it like everybody else. From the order forms to the operations to the sales processes. Disrupt, disrupt, disrupt. Think, oh, this is how they do it. How can I do that in the opposite way? How do I backfill and figure out, okay, that works fantastically. Let's do it completely different and see, and test these different models. It's a disruptive behavior, and that's what we're going for, right? We should change. We shouldn't do it exactly the same. No copycatting. Sometimes it is the best way, but really testing every method and process is the way to find true innovation.
Optimization and using technology in each of their steps. Thank you so much, David. So, if people want to learn more about Gopher or want to get in touch with you, where should we go and where can we find you?
So you can visit gophrapp.com. It's GOPHR, app.com. You can see us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And we'd love to hear from you. Love feedback. That's what makes our innovation move, right? Disruption comes through feedback and understanding the problems that we're dealing with.
Love that. Thank you so much for being on today, David.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark.
As we wrap up another episode of the CTO Compass, thank you for taking the time to invest in you. The speed at which tech and AI develop is increasing, demanding a new era of leaders in tech. Leaders that can juggle team and culture, code and infra, cyber and compliance, all whilst working closely with board members and stakeholders. We're here to help you learn from others, set your own goals and navigate your own journey. And until next time, keep learning, keep pushing, and never stop growing.